everybody is coming from a little bit of a different tradition background with meditation or with spiritual practices. And often those employ meditation or movement practices, which is meditation as well, as part of them. And so I was wanting to make sure that everybody feels like we're on the same page. And today also speak a little bit specifically about what I posted in the group, which is the use of concentration practices and how they can be co-opted for control. I would say that this is kind of the primary problem, or one of the primary problems that has occurred with the use of meditation in the current setting. So it's not to say that systemic oppression and the patriarchy didn't exist when meditation first was kind of used in like India and the East, but the way society was structured at that time was very different than now. And so it isn't that our problems are suddenly so different. It's that our expectations and our evolution is very different. And there is this huge benefit to using concentration practices. There's no question about the fact that if you have no mind-based discipline, it becomes even harder to work with phenomena, whether those are small, like your own personal phenomena, or larger aspects of phenomena, if you have no ability to focus your attention. Because phenomena itself will be destabilizing by nature. And as the field grows wider, or as your access to the field grows wider, which is more accurate because the field is already very wide, but it's your access to and within the field that widens and deepens. And as that happens, you will struggle much, much more if you don't have a basis for focusing your attention, because you will have no sense of agency in those spaces. And because we already struggle with agency so much because of the history of unhealthy power systems, that will be even more pronounced when you're in systems of power that are not human created. So just to say this piece specifically, the human created systems of power are the ones that are out of order and in a kind of disruptive to our natural movement format. Other sources of power are not in that same order. But because our templating has been in that kind of frame for so long around not just hierarchy, but extraction, because that is so embedded in our template and our grandparents and our great-grandparents and on for a very long time through many sources, what will happen is as we open to larger sources of power, which really will have their own way with us. So when that stuff starts to happen to us, we kind of go crazy because we don't know how to meet it, and we struggle with like holding attention so that we can meet it with the right kind of discernment. So a practice is really, really helpful. The problem for almost all of us is two things. Regardless of the instruction, we go into those practices like this. We're gonna like grit our teeth and find the breath over and over again. Or we're gonna like white knuckle it until we get that concentration state down. And the other part of it is that often the instructions are to do just that. And in neutrality, the instructions are not problematic. The reality is it does take a certain kind of like over and over culling of the movement of attention to really create this vessel of concentration. And once you create a vessel of concentration, what are you concentrating there? Not just the attention, but the energy. Your energy body is getting distilled into that space. It's getting honed. And the more it gets honed, the more you have the opportunity to experience phenomena that are not necessarily just human in creation. So a concentration practice is always going to open you to wider fields. But when you get there, almost nobody is talking about how you deal with that because of this templating and imprinting around oppression and around power imbalance. So for a long time, I was trying to, when I entered into states of big, massive multi-field chaos, I tried really hard to root and ground that chaos through concentration, which seems like it would kind of be the thing, right? You have all of this movement, and it seems like bringing it to a single point is going to be helpful. But in fact, because all of that movement for me was actually coming through and from a single point, I had already reached the singularity. I was not looking for it anymore. What happened was that concentration practices created huge amounts of despair, because the chaos from the singularity, the nature of it is movement. And the nature of it is inherent self-organization. And what I was trying to do was falsely imprison it in a kind of organization that I was imposing upon it. Essentially, that is the nature of systemic oppression. It is the false imprisonment of the movement of existence into an order that you or someone else is imposing because you suppose that that order is correct. And that supposing or that supposition is coming from a mind space that has not yet been opened into primal intelligence. It is not indoctrinated in its ways and its movements. So as a result, that imposition creates more fracturing. Anybody in here who has had experiences with trauma, which is all of us, know that the fracturing is a result of the imposition of not only the rupture of belonging, but the templating of compliance to a certain kind of belonging that may not be innate to you. That fracturing creates its own kind of chaos, but it is a kind of chaos that is not as self-organizing back to singularity. It's a kind of chaos that comes from a breaking apart purposefully, not from the intelligence coming from the singularity to find itself again in a new form of physics and organization. So as a result of all of that, I started playing with practice a lot, and I started playing with open awareness because I became open awareness. So it was the only place to play. But I also started playing with where concentration could go within open awareness to create anchors or scaffolding for that chaos so that it felt more manageable and I felt like I had influence. That's what I mean by agency. In a field of primal intelligence, you don't have control. You're useless. You can do spiritual practice till the cows come home, but the truth is you don't have the power. What you do have is a modicum of influence. And so your influence has to do with how much you can stay present in the here and now with your body, even if you're out of your body, but with this at the same time and meet the phenomena as they come towards you. as they move through you, as they are produced by you, by the new emerging you. So I started experimenting. I went back to the drawing board and started experimenting with this combination of like open awareness, softness, very yin, very pleasure based, but also very specific and discerning in my attention. And I did it for probably about 6 years, but I could not do it sitting down. I had to do it only in motion because the urgency to move was so strong as a kind of incorporation. So it was fine. I just did it while I was walking, while I was driving, while I was speaking, while I was grocery shopping. As long as I was moving, I could do the thing. And what I found was that this combination of those three things, those elements, allowed me to enter my body again, enter here again, and begin to also meet all of the things that were moving through me at the same time, in tandem. And there was no harshness, which meant that my system was then not rejecting it. If there's harshness, demand, if there is obligation, you're going to have a whole field that is created in rebellion and response to that. The three things are softness, which is the yin part of it, focus, and open awareness. You have to mitigate those things in your practice so that fluidity can be felt more succinctly, more easily, more continually. Okay, I'm going to stop there for a second because that was like a lot. And just let you guys take that in as well. Let your bodies and beings take that in. Yeah, I mean, what will happen too is that as you start to like come into the field of primal intelligence more, the demand for both movement and non-movement will be less negotiable. And so to hold non-movement where there wants to be movement can actually feel abusive. And then you get that space of like pushback. Now, the tough thing is that most of the time we don't have a tolerance for not switching states. So there's this fine line of building that tolerance and capacity for holding where you are, whether that be focus point or non-movement, and just observing the phenomena rather than reacting and trying to meet the phenomena. So you really have to use discernment to feel like, what is the benefit of the practice here, which is different than what is actually most comfortable or like most desired. You know, you have to have, I mean, this practice to me, what I love about it, and even what I love about this conversation, is that it's not about meditation. Like, this is about your positioning in life. Because the truth is, you're always just standing there, and there, or sitting there, or laying there, and there's always phenomena. And it's just that in certain settings, we don't think of it as phenomena. We don't frame it or orient towards it that way. But the truth is, the meditation practice is the practice for actually existing in the dream and understanding where agency is within the dream, how the dream itself is layered, what you are in the dream, where you are standing in the dream. And to me, like magical practices and spiritual practices that don't have a base of like continual or disciplined observation really, really struggle. To me, this is so important. You have to be able to observe what your system does. You have to get familiar with your own patterns. You have to know the places where you unconsciously hold yourself in place to your own detriment, because there's an abusive part of you that runs so deep that you will naturally not leave. Same thing in larger life. You won't leave, even when it's the right move. You leave too soon when you should be staying. These are all metaphors for the same thing. You're hungry, but you won't get up to get food. You'll stay longer, or you feel a twinge of hunger and you can't wait to run in the other room. All of this is the practice, and it all comes up in a sitting practice. And the more often and the longer you sit, the deeper the states of quiet will be. And the more quiet you are, the more subtle your attunement to the places that I'm speaking about that are virtually implicit. You have to get so quiet to observe those things. And then you get in touch with the nature of how we are so afraid of the quiet and so resistant of the space, or how we hide out there. It doesn't matter. That's why I always say you can't fuck up meditation. If you're sitting there and you're trying to do the thing and you're paying attention, you're meditating. That's all it is. And cumulatively, you will experience the benefit. No question about it. If you can't sit there, walk with no music, no distractions, no phone, and let the pacing of your walking become the metronome of the breaths also. Yeah. So it's the juicy stuff of all of this. I mean, I used to think about meditation as a practice to get somewhere too, because that was the framework that kind of was being sold, or that I adopted because I thought that was the way. And now I think of it as like a deepening of working with attention and working with the wider field and the wider body of attention, because it's all attention and it's all concentration.